Thanks for participating and leaving comments. This is part 3A of the audiobook, Two Worlds. This part begins the discussion of advanced group attack defense concepts that can save your life and the time spent achieving your defensive goals. These audiobooks are focused on bettering martial arts instructional guidance to navigate the mental minefields relating to current defense strategies against armed multiple attackers. This is about making the impossible possible again by getting your head around mind-blowing insights when facing many motivated attackers trying to down you. Enjoy. The topics covered this time are the first set of mental strategies. Abridged edition. The End of Martial Arts. Two Worlds. Part 3A. By Law Mun Mak. Copyright 2013 Law Mun Mak. This audio version is licensed for your personal enjoyment only. This audiobook may not be resold. Warning: it is strongly recommended that children and adults who are not experienced in martial arts should not attempt application of the principles of this book unless under the supervision of a currently certified instructor, coach in the fighting arts. My belief is that there has been other people developing similar and hopefully more effective skills than my humble attempts. My aim was to develop and expand views on how to fend off multiple attackers that will delight interested pundits and help martial artists on their journey. Please listen to previous parts to understand concepts and jargon. Chapter 8: Advanced Group Attack Defense Concepts. The discussion so far has introduced the two worlds, the resistance world and the energy world, best understood as being opposite sides of the same coin. The first being the most prominent world, or the natural world, that grabs all our attention by our need to solve problems against some form of resistance. The other world is a world based on freedom from resistance problems by a process of staying busy and never attaching to any social connection or proposal that would slow progress. What I want to attempt is to dig down a little more into multiple attack defense issues and improve the understanding of the jargon used so far in the previous audiobooks. I have discussed the two worlds to help differentiate the natural world we spend most of our time in working with resistance and the less competitive world where freedom and energy are the main concerns, usually found during a flight response. The traditional and socially orientated fight responses need resistance to exist, creating an expectancy for a win. Naturally, we are conditioned to play social games based on rules that control and dominate the outcomes. It is these rules that take attention away from seldom used flight responses that need clarity and freedom of thoughts in real time to see the path of least resistance to safety so you can live another day. Easily identified by the experienced when jumping back from a snake strike, where your whole system acts as one without thought to put your body at a safe distance at that moment. The energy world has been conceived to give better insights into a response that is not controlled or dominated by social rules. Both worlds want to help people save their lives when facing aggression, but the energy world gives better vision when the situation is a multiple violent life threat. It is important to begin your understanding by knowing fighting is based on a focal connection that consumes valued time to assess advantage, in conjunction with socially driven constructs to judge beforehand what are the best desired outcomes built on preconceived plans. As a differential, the energy world is based on flight, which has no social drivers, which acts faster and more efficiently when it counts, like facing a multiple attack. The irony is flight is talked about in stories of how mythical people somehow survived unbelievable odds when facing many armed aggressors. What makes this even more interesting, no martial assessment has been able to replicate the magical response or the outcomes expressed by these impressive stories. My sense is that martial arts is too obsessed with fighting strategy as the sole source of skills to use in all conditions. The aim of these audiobooks is to refocus interested parties to sense the freedom from resistance by suppressing our need for social connection just before a life threat. The key feature of experiencing the energy world is freedom from social connections and the sense that you have lots of energy and alertness at your disposal to confidently beat the attacker's intent to do harm. I am not expecting people from the natural world to automatically latch onto the energy world as a better solution against an actual life threat. Why? We are seldom aware that we are facing life threats, like hopping in a car, believing it to be safe, but on his word, voiding the fear of death relating to the unexpected accident. Society's rule-based evidence for safety makes us feel secure to move around, never needing to consider a survival response. The frequency of extreme danger in our policed environments is low, leaving people to view the news, movies and martial instruction to image situations of life endangerments. This results in a population of inexperience which enhances the fear response based on anticipating, expecting and hesitating all things threatening. Even when an actual threat has been experienced, the victim will reflect on the experience with imagined mental role-plays based on the accepted social images to conform to expectations. The natural defensive response is encapsulated by seeing people who find comfort in installing better locks for the house and buying a car with more airbags or even buy a gun, all suppressing our survival responses by procrastinating based on social advice and rules. Who wants to know there is always another unseen opportunist that could shaft and take your life no matter how good you are at fighting? Socially, we are conditioned to win the game, to build confidence by having played the game by the rules, aiming for that modicum of self-worth. Life and death are crude concepts we all are aware of, only given credence in front of the gods during an extreme life threat. To begin my discussion on developing more effective ways to deal with a group attack, I have coined the idea that every opponent encountered is a potential safe zone along your path of progression through a sea of resistance. This is not to say each attacker is not dangerous, it is a way of changing the view of the playing field so you will move more freely looking for an exit first. If you see each attacker as a problem to solve, you will stop and fight that allows the other attackers to take you down. One of the core concepts in the energy world is to keep moving as if there is no resistance to deal with. Then the obvious question is, how do you go through the nearest attacker's resistance? In the natural conditioned world, this is the only way to see each attacker as a resistor and a problem to solve. If they are conceived as a safe zone or a stepping stone to the next attacker, you are less likely to spend time fighting and wanting to win. The problem is not the attackers, but your conditioning to spend too much time fighting resistance. In the energy world, you are the problem, not the attackers. This is not what people want to hear. They want ready-made solutions like techniques to control and dominate those nasty attackers. In the energy world, we do not want to interfere with anyone else's intent. This means to leave people alone so they can do what they desire to do and to whom. The only aspect of a group encounter you can control for certain is the self. So, we start our defensive strategy by improving the main person, which is you. This is a hard concept to accept in the fight world, which has no preconceptions for self-safety residing in your personal perceptions. Also, you are not going to get a pat on the back for good work or be punished by others for getting it wrong. This is alien for most people to consider in the natural world. There is not much to display in the energy world, which is very disconcerting for the ego. All you have is self-praise, knowing you have escaped the clutches of a violent group attack. People will naturally ask how you did it, and you have no clear recall of the technical magic to help you sell your self-worth. In the energy world, the aim is to avoid resistance both mentally and physically, so there are no techniques as such. This makes no sense to the status quo. What is well understood is the problem that group attacks are real and best avoided by most martial artists to promote safety. It is put in the too hard basket, leaving the obvious question: what is happening in the energy world that makes it effective without using the staples of the resistance world? In the natural world, resistance is real and hard to deny just by wishing it away, especially when there are many attackers. The obvious conclusion is, then it must be bullshit, meaning it must be a massive deception being perpetrated. Whatever the rouge, be it those wonderful technical on-the-floor multiple attack demonstrations or the energy world's propositions, your chosen method needs to be tested under appropriate pressures of a well-motivated group attack. Again, I will emphasize the safety caveat: all activities proposed must be approved by a registered martial arts coach who is present. Otherwise, leave it alone. The energy world does not want to limit your experiences or hold you back by your conditioned technical norms. It begins by experiencing the continuity of real-time motion by mastering body momentum to maintain high energy levels throughout an encounter. Just like a moving train, with a huge momentum and a large energy store derived from its many connect mass parts traveling at speed. We refer to the combined moving masses as the one system, which has to stay together to maintain heightened stores of energy as it progresses. When the train stops to drop off a carriage, it is likened to offloading a strike, grab or attempted takedown, then all the potential energy is lost. This slowing of mass movement is seen every time when countering the resistant forces of an opponent, which drops the energy gauge fast. The problem of energy maintenance relates to your ability to stay at speed with the one system while moving through a sea of resistance. It is only when you decide to connect with resistance and offload a series of techniques does the one system split and loses its energy stores. The main aim in the energy world is to stay free from rules that force you to connect to resistance. The attackers are not the problem, it is your need to engage. There is no value to explode like a stick of dynamite, expelling all your energy, for the joy of seeing one attacker being knocked out. In my summary, the energy world wants mass movement to store energy, avoid resistance and become invisible and aim for exits. To be sensible, there are no benefits by stopping and focusing all your attentions on one attacker when there are many attackers just about to down you. Good strategy for the battlefield is more about logistics. It is better to keep everything well fed and fueled to last through a protracted battle. It is not good to lose your way by countering with the big cannon approach without logistical support, risks running low on ammunition with no backup. Why then are these basic understandings overridden by accepted self-defense strategies? Simply, the natural world is all about the immediate fight and winning the game. By contrast, the energy world considers safety first, a green light to disengage from socially orientated fight games for your own good. The ideas that back the energy world approach occur during unexpected life threats, when a person without hesitation rushes into a burning building to save a fellow human being. At no time does the person stop to consider some technical solution, it is about the urgency of exiting the situation safely with the victim. Every decision happens at speed, avoiding any attachments to save time. There is no intention to fight the fire, everything is about the path of least resistance to the exit. This is what the flight response does to get the job done. There will be no time given to social interactions, like standing with onlookers waiting for water hoses. The normal socially organized will find it hard to ignore conditioned beliefs alluding to better safety responses. The social rules for safety are set and indoctrinated for good reasons. There is something that is very different for some people from the normal when facing an urgent life threat. They seem to be driven by a different set of safety rules that requires a speedy response occurring in real time. There is no fear of anticipation, expectation, and hesitation to act. There is no fallback on doable plans. I like to begin my discussion with confused martial souls by reminding them it is the situation that counts, not the technique. A well-constructed group attack exercise is best to test all assumptions in real time. As martial artists, we should be aware that good ideas can be delusory. Strategy may be well demonstrated on the training floor and easily sold as effective, but not fit for life defense purposes. The energy world is based on achieving personal outcomes of safety against the odds of a multiple attack rather than gaining control over just one adversary for short-term gains. Martial spruikers seldom do their own pressure testing on their assumptions and proposed findings. From my observations, experts have the habit of walking onlookers slowly through each burst of defensive excellence with a tremendous explanation to boot. All I can say, it would be nice to see actual pressure testing of ideas at speed by a convincing group of attackers. This is the ruse that should be exposed. We are so conditioned to overcome the individual's resistance while standing in the same spot for way too long to be effective during a group attack. It is all the hitting and grabbing that helps the attackers catch up and down you fast. Facing weapons is not the problem. You would not be human if you did not worry about facing a group of motivated attackers with weapons. My aim is to change your perception of where the problem lies and where are the opportunities to make the situation easier for you. Let's start by saying humans are attracted to dangerous objects, they fear them and yet they want them for advantage. Who does not want a superior weapon before they go to battle? The real problem is your attention to what the weapons means to safety when facing them. If you hold the big stick, it's fine, but if it is to be used on you, it conjures up a whole new kettle of fish. If the shiny knives are flashing all around you, the connections to the weapons will be extreme. Ask yourself, who is carrying the monkey now? The weapons have become attention traps and a huge series of problems to solve. You could try closing your eyes, but you know the problem still exists. It is not rocket science to know you are in a weakened state and the attackers have got the cat in the bag. It is a good way to re-examine your inner demons related to defense failures. Our social conditioning in the arts expresses that winning feeling, but in the case of weapons it turns to desperation, anticipating the worst. The choices are either to submit expecting the worst or attack and hope for a positive result. Both are not recommended. Running is an interesting response, it is good only if done long before the attack. Hesitate to look, this response is not going to end well. This is likened to taking too much time examining wild dogs. They are experienced at running down hesitant prey. Weapons tend to change the behavior of the attackers. They are now more willing to wait until you react and then boom. Once you connect with the attacker's weapon, the problem is set in stone, weakening your defenses. A knife is one of the hardest weapons to stay safe from, especially if there are multiple users and opportunists. Yes, running is the best, but situational awareness is mightier and will keep you sane. I always think the problem lies in how you view yourself rather than the big shiny blade waving in front of you. The real issue lies in our habits of anticipating, expecting and hesitating long before the intention of the attackers is known. On the training floor we know who is holding the weapon and what it is meant to represent. Defense against a knife is possible according to expert sprukers, who can take the knife away from the attacker and turn the tide of the attack back onto the knife-wielding person. These on-the-floor experiments have given hope to many martial artists, motivating them to spend some extra time training harder and faster in preparation for a real situation. But does it represent what happens? The attackers always have the advantage of having hidden knives. Somehow today you decided to courageously connect with one waving knife, in the hope for something better. Ouch, you have slowed and focused. This gives the rest of the attackers extra time to come in stabbing. It is all that talk of danger that scares students of self-defense to stop moving beyond that which is played out in those in-hall choreographed scenarios against weapons. It is the resulting habit to connect and focus on the immediate problem, while disregarding the overall threat posed by many attackers. When the threat is real enough, it can trigger an avalanche of hormones that stalls students' progress to disengage from the impossible, like facing multiple weapons. We are socially organized to feel unworthy to come up with life-saving solutions. The imposter in us must be a huge distraction, continually consuming all our thoughts surrounding the moment of the indefensible. The triad of fear that holds people to ransom, such as anticipation, expectation, and hesitation, automatically raises the bar for technical defensive solutions. It is built into our social conditioning to look for controllable problems that shows people that you have an upper handle on the impossible. What is more important, artists have limits on realistic experiences, making their imagined solutions questionable. What is evident, people are hungry for information to quell their inner voice, hopefully making the solutions work and become teachable to make their ideas real. It is these socially organized mental models that suppress our survival sharpness to act during the extreme heat of a life threat. We rather forfeit triggering the survival reaction for more acceptable social demonstrations. Survival becomes a throwaway term, limiting one's own understandings to a series of imaginations to what is real. This makes sense when considering real happens during periods of mental darkness with limits on a clear recall of the event. For actual survivors, the threat feels unbelievable and still living to tell an acceptable story. To tell people weapons can kill is not helping, as real situations tend to happen too fast to make an effective assessment to plan a counterattack beforehand. We are knowingly ignorant of real information, so as good social beings we do what we are told by experts, even though it is far removed from the true survival response. We are told to respect the danger of weapons and not to engage and be the hero. Is it to be a matter of submission before reacting? This means you are conditioned to connect, assess and plan, and hesitate. This means the fear response must be overwhelming if you didn't act, leaving huge blind spots in your defenses. What I would like to know is what has been ignored. I would say everything. It is a group attack with many weapons. Thinking is not going to solve much. The problem is the gaps in attention, better referred to as inattention. Simply focusing on shiny objects diverts attention away from the rest of the situation. On the training floor it is all about that focus on that one knife. It is difficult enough to deal with one highly controlled knife attack and disarm. Multiple versions of this would be impossible to conceive even long before a real event. The reality is in the moment, there are always insurmountable unknowns, beyond any conceivable or effective planning. There is just not enough time to dwell on what can be done when the building is falling all around you. There are no mental guarantees that you can carry defensive strategy into a group attack from the classroom. One thing is for sure, effective strategy has to be operationalized in real time. This means beyond conscious thought. The details of a situation are too hard to predict, so defensive planning is but a pipe dream and slow to implement. There is always another hidden attacker ready to jump on top you, and where are those hidden weapons? It is naive to think you can control and dominate the ins and outs of a multiple attack. You are already behind the 8 ball by thinking it is possible. The only aspect of the battle that is in your control is yourself. This realization is immediately understood and lost once you decide to connect with any of the attackers. The expectant answers somehow gain traction by knowing you have to throw a bigger and better proposition back to the attackers to stop them in their tracks. As the joke goes, this is a knife, show them a bigger weapon or ask a ridiculous question to see if they respond in kind, hopefully disrupting their collective intent. The question does not save the day, but it indicates you have enough power to affect their minds. The attackers are socially organized and tend to respond in kind. It's when you see yourself having to submit to their propositions that lands you into trouble looking for impossible defensive answers. Everyone has thoughts of anticipation, expectations, forcing people to find time to hesitate. For every thought a person has, there is an inattention. When a person thinks about solutions, they are less focused on the situation. The question you should ask yourself, where does the real problem lie? To help answer this, I have been using the analogy of a rat darting around, aiming to avoid a bunch of cats looking for a meal. The cats are far better equipped, faster, and has the numbers to have the advantage. The rat is still able to scoot around the traps wanting nothing to do with any of those hungry felines. To be truthful, the rat is not always successful for many reasons. But once the rat gets into the groove and does not hesitate, exiting becomes a great proposition. What the cats do not know, the need to exit makes the rat move faster without hesitation. All the rat has to do is remain disengaged from the cat's intent, stay self-driven and make decisions in real time. Winning is not the rat's goal, nor is trying to control the cat's behavior. The cats are allowed to do what they like, and the speedy rat must stay consistent till exiting safely. Any attempt to fight the cat's resistance would stall progress and the freedom to move. The best way to avoid connection is to never resist or slow down. This leaves less time to think about your weaknesses or your silly arsenal of counterattacks. As a reminder of the current subject, the cats are well armed with their sharp claws. Weapons everywhere and somehow not assisting in the outcome for the cats. This analogy seems to run counter to the status quo, probably spooking defense artists. It is only when the attackers grab your attention, you will lose your speed and flight response. We are conditioned to connect and revert to fight for our answers. There is no chance of having access to the magic of real-time decision-making. People in the natural world need to think, argue and intellectualize events before they take place. If you can see the situation unfolding in your mind, you are connected to the solution and the fear associated to the imagined event. If you can imagine beating down the attackers and controlling the situation, you would assume you now have the confidence to do the job. The imagined advantage also grows in one's mind when training harder than anyone else, which is the worst of self-delusions. I am sure attacking groups like exploiting your social instinct to win. I always wondered why people ask about fighting when looking for defense skills against a group attack. Fighting is a two-person skill that does not translate well to a multiple attack. At least the rat was wise to commit to freedom first, which is off-putting and confusing to the cats. The attackers are supposed to be empowered by their numbers and weapons. This is where it gets interesting because the rat is not utilizing ducks and weaves to avoid being grabbed and eaten. To weave your way through a sea of cats is a poorly executed fight strategy, needing extra time to measure one's responses to avoid the cat's reach. The strategy may appear to be ducks and weaves, and if it was that simple, the rat would slow and check successes by looking back, allowing the cats time to swamp the defenseless creature. This is not what is happening. The rat stays consistent in action and does not want anything to do with the cats while running at speed. To the observer, this may look like ducking and weaving. If it was, this would suggest the rat has to regulate its speed, giving the cats much-needed time to measure and down the little critter fast. Measuring is a conditioned resistance world response to the fear of a superior attack. The rat can only disengage from the cat's intent only by reacting ahead of the cat's attacks, beating their intent. I have referred to this response as acting in future time. This means the rat has to act before the cats are able to measure the rat's speedy progress. The idea of rushing straight at an armed attacker may seem unreasonable and a bit crazy. In truth, it is a way to activate the flight response that adds to your speed of progress at the same time helping you ignore the attacker's intent. If the rat has any intent to take on the cat, then that would be the end of its life. People are conditioned to get quickly overloaded with all their defensive technical skills, together suppressing their speedy survival responses. This is great on the training floor as the imagined solutions are processed in slow motion, one by one, step-by-step fashion. Do you still think a real situation is a simple series of technical actions? Of course, nobody wants to get injured, and dangers are real, and extra training is advisable. I can still sense sharp weapons are playing on your mind. This has to be a huge distraction to anyone's performance when it counts. All that technical magic to disarm attackers one by one must be disappointing to people in the martial world. Now, I am offering skills relating to speed, energy, and real-time responses as an alternative, not as an add-on. All those years of training and conditioning are still the better choice for those who do not like change. Again, effectiveness needs to be tested against a well-motivated group of attackers. I do not think by just deciding to accelerate to speed will open up a new world of clarity and solutions. In the resistance world, people are trapped by fear of anticipation, expectation, and hesitation long before they move to survive a violent group attack. If you are interested in the energy world, you will need to understand speed is the key to be a small target, which allows you the room to outrun the intent of the attackers. As mentioned, the rat needs to scurry at speed for good reason, effectively disrupting the cat's choices to connect. This story is even more remarkable, knowing cats' reflexes are extremely fast. The problem is not the attackers and their weapons, it is all that social mud we carry around, dumped on us by those spruikers who know better. On a lighter note, if you could disappear, then the attackers would have no target, a solution seldom considered as meaningful. The disturbing mental grab occurs way before the attack, when well-meaning instruction dishes up a situation where you need to dig yourself out of a grave. It is just nice to know we are stupid enough to carry this burden presented by imagined attackers who have already jumped on top of you. In the energy world, weapons are not the immediate concern, as the bigger picture always hides hidden traps to do you in. If you have no intention to control the attackers and beat them down, what is left is to look after yourself, escaping the situation. Do not begin your defense by being submissive when facing the impossible problem. Begin by acknowledging it is you that needs to re-emerge from your conditioning. All can be found by freeing up your perspective before the attackers find a way to drum up the worst. This means you build on your position, not the attackers, as they are the unknown force of impending doom. If you focus on the shiny knife, you have become attached to the resistance and are bound for a whole lot of pain. The good thing about the cats and the rat, there are no social rules to slow anyone down. In the energy world, you have no intent to change the world or the world around you. This is freedom. Accelerating straight into the danger zone. Accelerating at armed opponents is counterintuitive and sounds like it will end in pain. The idea of rushing into the danger zone without a plan has to be unwise, or could it confuse the knife-wielding attacker? It would be stupid if it became the only choice to disarm the attacker. Could it have been done as an act of desperation? Anyone who has faced a weapon knows it is very hard to close the gap and take control of an uncooperative attacker. The idea of having to face weapons alone is usually beyond even the best of us. Insanity is not unheard of. Historical stories tell tales of brave soldiers running into hot machine gun fire to their death. Less remembered battlefields involving thousands of soldiers willing to stand and slash their way to victory. Entering the danger zone seems to be possible given the right motivation. To think people are all wise would not be right. Knowing they can endanger their lives for a belief does not seem to be a mistake. People are able to accelerate straight in, it is doable under social rule. You would consider any thinking person would reject the proposal long before such a daring move. Thinking of a situation before it happens is only natural, being the mainstay for defense artists to condition their mind and body for the offense. In the energy world, every situation is treated as unexpected and novel, meaning you have no prior expectations of how the situation will unfold. The issue is that thinking starts the battle long before it takes place. Unfortunately, self-defense courses enhance people's fears of anticipation and expecting the worst. The idea of adding weapons into the mix of a group encounter makes the situation feel extra scary and out of one's control. The fear of losing your life now becomes a mental reality and physically crippling. The irony is people are wanting to prepare for the worst, making reality even more unpalatable. The energy world is no slouch, making training situations as difficult as possible, with one important caveat: it always has to be a surprise and novel each time the defensive situation is played out. Repetition of any event is the best way to train bad habits. A violent life threat is immediate and never the same twice, so to trigger a habitual response may seem advantageous, but it is egregious to say the least. It is only natural to construct a plan of action. It is why we are the higher beings. Without a plan, you could say you are in the hands of the gods. But I must say, by asking for help from a higher power seems to alleviate the pain of the perceived threat. When dealing with well-armed multiple attackers, plans are good when avoiding the situation, but once the attack begins, they soon become the basis of your inflexibility to counter the attacker's worst. The energy world takes advantage of the flight response. It allows a person to switch off socially learned connective defensive strategies for a faster disengaging response, separating you from the immediate threat in real time. This all happens at speed, leaving you no time for smelling the roses. The issue to avoid is the habit of training specific situations which will not trigger the faster flight response. Instead, it reinforces a bad habit of anticipating an effective outcome. Take those instructional demonstrations showing a person shielding behind an attacker, backing up against a wall, enabling an effective way to pick off incoming attackers. The plan appears feasible and repeatable, but it is not. I have never seen this work outside of the training hall. It is an exercise pure and simple, never pressure tested against an effective group attack. Over the years I have asked experienced pundits to try these skills under pressure, and the findings were never pretty. Flight, on the other hand, has no expectations relating to controlling the attackers. Its strength is solely reliant on the target's ability to disengage. Practice is always conducted against multiple attackers where the attackers are advised to down the target fast. As this is done in a training hall, the repeatable aspect is the starting trap, meaning there is no obvious escape from the attacking group. It is meant to be the worst possible situation after failing to leave the situation alone by good situational awareness. Now fully aware you are in a situation where there is a possibility of being taken out. The main mental focus for martial artist follows closely to what happens in a two-person fight. You are taken down, then what? Well, in a group attack your chances of recovery shrinks dramatically, especially if there are weapons. It becomes the impossible situation. The aim of the trap is to sharpen every advantage before the bomb drops. The idea of trying to come back from being downed is virtually impossible against many attackers. So, trying to get out of an armbar is not the main concern here. What is hard to grasp is the energy world occurs in real time, where everything is in motion, meaning there is no time spent simulating solutions. Flight is about acting outside conscious thought, not about developing some counter that will bring you back to life. You would think that all survival responses begin with full activation of the body's systems to maximize output. This does not equate to the natural world's fight response of harder and faster, only approaching 50% of your capabilities, being regulated by doubt. The extra 50% situates with social constraints and conditions. Easily understood when you judge your technical prowess as never being quite right. Compared to the excellence of a baby's grip, we are conditioned to thread a needle carefully, at what cost to power and speed. Flight is another survival response, less well understood, also allows for a seamless access to one's full capabilities. Meaning, flight has to have a clean separation from the social rules and conditions, otherwise it turns into a fight response. Accessing flight occurs during life threats or immediate danger, always activating the one system to accelerate fully to find safety. The issue is, not all situations are like a striking snake, where a simple jump back may be enough. The problem in our social conditioned world is, it requires full attention to adhere to rules and execute prescribed skills to stay safe. At no time can you disconnect from these organized statements of excellence without being judged negatively. We are not free from the propaganda and the conforming forces. As explained, moving at speed is not a learnt duck and weave strategy, which everyone is aware of. Duck and weave requires you to connect with the attackers. Speed, on the other hand, has nothing to do with the offensive group. The socially conditioned strategy is based on a planned escape requiring time to think, thus slowing progress, that sends you into mental darkness needing extra time for reorientation. There are also intentional pushes and parries to get around the attackers, splitting the one system, interfering with the continuity of flow. At every step of the way you are checking your progress, internalizing, meaning you are playing the attacker's game with planned tricks. The analogy of the cats and the rat captures the rat's disconnected, flight speed state well. Flight is a complete response needing no immediate feedback or checks for effectiveness, leaving one's attention on the goal of exiting the situation. Those socially organized counters will always slow progress. The reaction of flight is to outrun the attacker's intent and not to submit to the attacker's game plan. This leaves very little time to grab onto anything, sending the attackers behind the 8-ball and left in the dust. For martial artists, a group is conceived as a series of one-on-one fights with many hands. It is no wonder defense artists automatically choose to go harder and faster as a stopgap to overcome the many hands, feet and grabs delivered by the group. Just as a reminder to readers, martial pundits are not very pleased with current multiple attack defense skills. Dealing with multiple attacks is about getting to safety first by being one step ahead of the group's intent. Time now becomes your asset or your enemy, knowing you have to get rid of distractions, like not giving time to the group's attack proposal. Worse still, giving time to the inquiring mind, like what if you are taken to ground, how in the hell are you going to avoid the onslaught? Well, you are too late to exit the situation and time has become your enemy. Moving early, meaning ahead of the attacker's intent to do harm, allows you to use attacker's position as safe spaces by being first to act. You achieve this by running straight into the danger zone with no intent of connection to any resistance. This indicates you have to outrun the attacker's defensive reactions and, more importantly, your own. Flight only occurs if you have no intention to control the situation. You have to let the attackers do what they want to do. This is only achievable if you are moving fast enough in real time. Any slowing of your actions indicates you have connected with the attackers. The irony is, if you are moving directly towards the attackers, they have already spent most of their attention time preparing for the impact, stiffening up. They are driven by expectations and you are responding to what is, or real-time unfoldings. As mentioned, any plans incorporating anticipation, expectation, and hesitation cannot approach the advantages found by using real-time responses. So, any sense of the fear triad means all is happening in slow motion inside one's head. Even when thinking of the fastest and most effective technique, you are in simulation mode, outside of reality, which is slow. The energy world requires full activation of the one system to enliven the mass effect and real-time responses. To correct your attitude, you must ignore social attractions and propositions thrown at you by the attackers. The situation has to be a life threat offering no other choices except to escape. Flight makes you a small target by your ability to freely move consistently at speed ahead of the attacker's intent to take you down. It is as if you are playing a completely different game. Simply you are antisocial, leaving you with no desire to connect both mentally and physically. The passive-aggressive approaches of the attackers will have no effect, as there is no to and fro of the usual communication skills. By this time, you are moving at speed, along a path of least resistance, avoiding all objects along your line of progression. All of this comes alive in real time when facing an unmanageable situation, compared to time-consumed planning and training each situation when considering defensive strategies. To fight means you have too much to do and have no plans to get out as quickly as you can. Hesitation and expectation are the call cards of a fight. The faster danger closes in, the harder and faster a fighter will fight. During a life threat, you cannot spend time consciously calculating the best path of action and waiting for the cheer squad. Working memory is way too slow to find real-time solutions to impending life threats. It sounds like the problem of hesitation or choice paralysis. It needs to be understood the threats are coming in from all directions, so why are you focusing only on one or two problems? This is not going to end well. The good thing about flight activation, it leaves you with no alternatives but to escape the attackers. Also, there is no time wasted acknowledging the problem. Again, you have to have a handle on what it means to be in the moving world. If you admit there is a problem, you are living in your head, anticipating, expecting and hesitating, standing there wasting time and resources. The problem is not the attacking group, it is conditioning. People in the resistance world have to stand their ground like a fly trap, hoping to catch their prey and fight the person to down them fast. In the energy world, it is up to you to keep moving freely, not responding to what the attackers desire. That means, just one connection is enough to be the end of your freedom and safety. So, any thoughts of control and dominance over the attackers cannot end well. Bending the attack. Ask yourself, is there any chance to outrun the attacker's intent? In the energy world, this is one of the aims referred to as bending the attack. The result is it leaves the attacker hesitant and feeling useless. The idea to grasp here is the ability to force the attackers to follow your actions before deciding to take you out first. The social misunderstanding is that the attackers are in control and command how the game will play out. The simple questions they want you to answer are, do you want to fight, or do you submit? The attackers indicate this by words or by immediate and violent attack. Nothing really unfolds unless you play your part, which is simply stated as the victim. The power of the situation affects how you decide to respond to counter the attacker's intent. What is needed is a magical strategy that will turn off the attack. In the resistance world, this can never happen due to most people's need to connect and resist harder than the attackers. In the energy world, disconnection is the goal, and this is where bending the attacker's perceptions can give you a space to move freely through the sea of potential resistance that is bound to do you in. It is based on mental disconnections done at speed, driven by the urge to outrun the attacker's intent to do you harm. A disconnection could be as basic as saying, I am sorry, I got to go to the toilet while moving to an imaginary room. The result affects the original plans of the group, now having to adjust their intent to a less than aggressive response. What you have done is changed the ground rules, which could be referred to as bending the attack. In truth, you have given some control back to yourself. The irony is you would have to open a huge floodgate of distractions to control the many approaching attackers. These tricky questions have their place as being a great way to stop the attackers getting their claws into you immediately. The issue is, not all attackers are on the same wavelength. Your influence, though effective on some, cannot be guaranteed to affect all, therefore you could be outflanked in seconds and down you go. The saying goes, grab one attacker mentally or physically, while the rest down you. The aim in the energy world is to bend the attack across all the approaching attackers. I can suggest moving at speed, but it has nothing to do with moving your techniques faster. It is the one system that needs to be moving at speed. This is what will rapidly reduce the attacker's time spent on adjusting their original plans. Standing there anticipating how you will explode into action only makes you a very big target. Moving the whole body at speed brings back the idea of a small target and the idea of the moving world, where everything changes in real time. This leaves the attackers no time to hesitate or anticipate their aggressive desires to down you fast. Disconnecting your mind from the attacker's social constructs allows you to do things in real time, meaning you are adjusting well ahead of the hesitant attackers, all before they're offensive. Now, feeling lucky, you could begin to believe there are no attackers. This is not true, but at times it seems magical. People in the natural world are easily trapped by the slightest proposal. The proposition of having to face a group attack is the trap from hell, literally on steroids. The idea of finding freedom would seem impossible, while safe exits would seem to be non-existent. Bending the attack is like walking between the stepping stones, going where normal people would not dare travel. In our ruled society, we play games within prescribed lines, restricting our attention to a narrow set of solutions. Moving at speed is not conducive to enhancing or bettering the applications of our much-loved techniques, therefore it will not find a place in the fight world. In the energy world, the aim is not to blast your way through the resistance with something more powerful than our martial competitors can dream up. The task is to move at speed, avoiding resistance and the resulting connections, aiming to outrun the attacker's intent by bending the attack. Maintaining speed and progression is essential to able to bend the attack. Until you rejig your brain, there is no chance seeing this as a valued skill. Years of connective conditioning will not just disappear and be replaced with a completely different mindset. Naturally, we are taught to latch onto any resistance with all our might. The needed changes may seem contradictory, but the speed approach can also make us feel safe in execution. We are taught and conditioned to believe you cannot stop the attackers without giving them everything that is better and faster. This instinctively makes sense that you will need more of everything. In the resistance world, safety equates to the control and destruction of each attacker. It is no wonder the concept of bending the attack would seem to be far-fetched and has no place when fighting off attackers. The trap for all fighters is their precious gameplay that is not dissimilar to a chess game. The playing field of defense does incorporate all the good stuff, like strength, power, and the ability to submit people. There is no question to win at fighting, you need to be very skilled to overcome highly trained adversaries. Exposure and the correct experience cannot be denied and overrides all other possibilities. Multiple attack situations are a great segue for fighters to further emphasize their remarkable skills, even though the extra required is mentally flawed. It ignores we are prone to bias respecting power and force. This means it is our memories that are hard at work long before physical contact. It is almost impossible for people to accept they live in their thoughts. Believe it or not, the past now becomes reality. It's the well-constructed inner world that is much easier to access, it feels more secure and controllable, so why escape its confines for the chaos of the real world? Socially, people are conditioned to believe they have control over their own aspects of life, not realizing how easily their inner thoughts can be exploited. Bending the attack is just one hack to take advantage of the attacker's social makeup. It is the expectancy of our inner partition signage that affects both your view and the attacker's perceptions of how the attack will pan out. People are supposed to do what they are told even when under threat. Don't cheat, it is not looked upon favorably by participants. Life is about following your mentors for security, thus reinforcing our social beliefs. Thinking and telling stories is socially prized, but someone forgot to tell you it makes you the target. Bending the attack needs you to disengage from expectant social gameplay and learn to move to your own rhythm, forcing the attackers to re-examine their intentions. Now, for the attackers it is a game of catch-up. The situation has become suddenly fluid, with less rhyme and reason. I can hear pundits asking what that means. It always becomes the dilemma for people in the resistance world to understand the depth of social conditioning and its effects on their personal expectations controlling the situation. The trap is set long before the battle, those ideas beset by rules controlling one's thoughts beyond the happenings of the unfolding event. Magicians with their wisdom use this hack all the time to complete and make their tricks invisible. By choosing the slower fight responses, you now have enough time to access those inner constructs relating to the expected pain multiple attackers can inflict. Physical flight. This could be construed to be as simple as jumping onto your opponent using gravity as your energy source. Jumping on a person is not new or very innovative. Even though it breaks through resistance with relative ease, it uses your moving body weight as the weapon. Its purpose is a little misleading, as pundits try to make flight a very powerful technique that will blast through the attacker's defenses. Now we have another devastating technique to add to one's arsenal. In the energy world, flight is unsuitable as it has become a technique. As mentioned, techniques have a start and a stop and takes up too much time to fully execute. The issue, in the energy world you are always moving at speed, which leaves you no time to connect with any attacker intending to do you harm. So, why highlight physical flight? As a reminder, fighters find physical flight very attractive, it's powerful and effective. It is like Thor's hammer, enabling you to make a huge impact on the opponent. A smart person could start a whole martial school with physical flight alone. Flying like a cannonball makes you feel good, allowing you to be very aggressive and decisive. It can certainly blast through the best of defenses with surprising success. It is best played out in the short game, like a fight. Flight is enhanced by adding a knee or elbow to the trajectory. What is of interest to the energy world is the experience of moving the body as one unit without planting your feet on the floor. Flight brings the body together like no other fighting strategy. The staples like hitting, grabbing, pushing and the normal duck and weave requires your body to split, thus losing the mass effect created by the momentum of the one system. As it is a technique, continuity of speed is lost when your feet land on the floor. Physical flight also helps people experience real-time responses, usually requiring little imagination to execute and complete. Even though the attacker may change position, you have no intention to change your strategy mid-flight. Also, you get to experience centering your attack with full commitment. Once you take to the air, you are not responding to your opponent's resistance until you land. You do not waver from your commitments until the strategy is complete. The worst part of the experience is landing, which brings you back to the fight. Simply, your activation is based on self-preservation and domination of the situation. The takeaway is physical flight allows you to overcome fear to literally run into cannon fire by using this daredevil jumping strategy. Unfortunately, it's only suitable for the short game. What else can be ascertained from physical flight? It gives us a sample of what it means to be a small target, leaving the opponent with limited choices. Also, flight is a gross set of movements, meaning less time spent fine-tuning the detail. It is great for adding static weapons like a knee or elbow. One big negative is when you land there is a delay for the rest of your arsenal to come alive to fight onwards. Once in the air it uses speed of the one system, therefore stores huge amounts of energy until you land. The body is kept surprisingly compact in the air, making you the smaller target and difficult to counter. Another interesting point is flight lands where the opponent wants to stand. This breaks positional rules of a stand-up fight. Now the whole system becomes the basis of weaponizing the body's mass. To make flight a little more fun, exponents love to glide over the opponent's defenses by rotating in mid-air, landing facing the opponent in a new advantageous position. I think it is more a dojo trick rather than having real application. I'm sure everyone wants to try physical flight and discover many great things to like about it. It is a technique with benefits. I can see it as an exercise to introduce people to mass movement. The obvious dampener, physical flight, does not exist in the energy world. Its mention is to highlight there are conceivable and somewhat equivalent insights found in the resistance world of what it may be like to be in the energy world. I have mentioned flow as a special feature of the energy world, meaning speed and progress must be always maintained. This is achieved by having no mental and physical connections with the attackers, which discounts all forms of techniques, like physical flight. Reduction. Reduction is a very important concept in the energy world, which will become the basis to how people understand bending the attack, which delays the attacking group intending to do your harm. As with most ideas, people in the natural world are obsessed to turn reduction into a technique. Reduction is something you cannot visualize in your mind's eye, it is an outcome by following some process. People have this idea that to be valid they need to see it controlling and submitting an aggressive person. The resistance world exists because people collect techniques from what appears to be an unlimited supply of step-by-step solutions like physical flight. Like all ideas, they get distorted when passed around over time. The aim in the energy world is to stop the urge to view the world from a technical viewpoint. For the die-hard pundits, this is going to sound ridiculous to even consider a technique-less battlefield. What other way can you pass knowledge on, let alone get through the flak zone unhindered? Techniques are the natural world's food for thought, it has for centuries made martial training worthwhile. Reduction is a small target approach, an ingenious way to pass through the flak zone of a resisting opponent by trying to be invisible. That is getting through the defensive resistance untouched, which sounds impossible for most practicing martial artists. The ease is due to a small target approach, which forces the attackers to make decisions behind time. Reduction is the ability to reduce the attacker's choices by constraining the time to make the defensive decisions. In the natural world, time and the number of choices is expanded to better demonstrate your ability and smarts to find a better outcome. This means we want to learn beforehand how to fight off resistance and dominate the situation. Martial arts systems are saturated with ample examples beating your way through resistance to achieve a successful submission. Physical flight, as a technique, is a good example, inspiring people to achieve a better defensive outcome with advantages. How to be that small target? Well, you need to bend the attack enough ahead of time through the layers of resistance, made up from the attacker's counter-strategies. The catch for pundits is learning how to move at speed through resistance and leave all your techniques at home. Even one thought of a technique splits the one system, meaning you must slow or stall progress to measure your technical counter-response. This forces you to forfeit getting ahead of the attacker's intent to do you harm, allowing an increase in time for the interaction to grow. It is all about time spent thinking and not doing. This is a fine line of understanding that doing does not require thinking. But everyone thinks before doing, it is only natural. This all changes when it is a life threat, where the brain suppresses thinking for doing, better referred to as the flight response. This results in a fast-moving response, where the brain functions beyond its conscious recall, which is the basis of the disconnect from the attacker's intent to do you in. In the energy world we are always moving at speed, not from one attacker to another, but through the weaker layers of resistance making up the path of least resistance. This occurs because in the energy world you are in the do mode, way before thinking takes over. The results bend the attack, leaving the attackers standing still feeling useless. So, these reduction processes and the resulting small target outcomes does not allow the exponent time to take stock of the attacker's defensive moves. The defensive counters are never thought of as a problem to solve beforehand on the floor, during or after an attack. Socially we are bound to solve problems only because we slow down to smell the roses and ponder. People in the resistance world tend to spend most of their time believing they are well versed to see every possibility set before them. This is so far from the truth, knowing that most pundits feel they are just an imposter facing the music ill-prepared, unable to tell anyone due to the fear of being caught out. Socially, our mind's eyes are corrupted by our conditioning as we pass through the world's challenges aiming blindly for success. Just ask a magician, life is an illusion, otherwise the accepted magic would not work. This is why we use tests like group encounters to press people out of their imagined worlds back into the reality, voiding our made-up delusions. Do not challenge a person's beliefs, you will end up fighting, where the stronger argument becomes the new right. Given that few people can open their minds, where do you think the new right will take us? The concepts of reduction are not designed to interfere or connect with the attacker's beliefs, it works because ignorance is so prevalent in the martial world. Ignorance is better thought of as the experience of social bliss that imagine technical strategies to be extremely potent. There is no question techniques tested in the ring are good for a fight and should never be taken lightly. The reversal in our security perceptions takes a dive when our beloved techniques are allowed to be pressure tested against a well-motivated group of attackers. Pressure testing, when done well, is a great way to return people to their correct level of understanding. The results do not lie, it is that people like to lie to themselves and others to gain attention from their peers. On the other hand, backing up your beliefs with actual testing gains a lot of bunny points from those who want to listen. Lies are not a cursed experience, techniques fail all the time against multiple attack situations. The problem is, who cares when a good story can be told, while miming an actual event, slowing actions down to demonstrational speeds, giving time to rest and reload the cannons. This must be effective to say the least, allowing the gurus to be right, having no reason to check their handiwork. I must say, the more effective techniques appear to be, the more you are not attending to the infoldings of the attacking group. What I am sure of, the group has been waiting for you to use your big and powerful strikes, just in time to bag you. For every technique you decide to use against the attackers, the opportunists will be well ahead, ready to unleash your worst nightmare. To be effective with reduction, you must be that fast-moving small target darting around, not offering the attackers any recognizable shape to counter. As soon as you think of a technique, attackers will recognize the intent to resist, and they will promptly grab you and down you go. Speed must be maintained by not splitting the one system. So, what splits the one system are the fine motor movements of the body, like a punch where the body focuses on the actions on the end of one limb to complete its task. The difference is that gross movements like the mass effect do not require any specific focus to be successful. When the one system eventuates, only achievable at speed, you can move wherever you like without distraction. A punch, on the other hand, needs a lot of attention, like pulling a bow, aiming then letting it go, hoping to hit the target. A totally connected task from start to finish. When you connect to your opponent, you slow to measure and then explode like a cannon. Works well on one-on-one battles and is central to all martial thinking. The moving world is only alluded to in the natural world by the terms flow or getting into the groove. The resulting freedom is the sensation cherished in the energy world, but this would mean you would be separated from resistance, or you have become invisible. In the energy world, all you want to do is move at speed and keep the one system without splitting. This will hide your true intentions by remaining that small target to the enemy by staying free from any counter-resistances. Knowing that your speed would immediately disappear instantly if you split your actions. Try one technique and you will be that big target again. The one thing that is not obvious to fighters is you never forfeit your speed to gain a moment's control over another person. You are in the moving world where there is no end or dominance goal. Speed is the theme of this book, and yet it remains the least understood skill out there. The Rat and the Hungry Cat stories were a means to highlight the advantages of speed. I fear pundits reading this may assume speed relates to strikes, kicks and takedowns, all fine in a two-person fight. The conception of speed is better likened to a fast-moving train, not likely to slow down quickly. The energy world wants the mass of the one system to remain at a high velocity without being hindered. When speed is maintained, energy remains high. The catch is you need to be free from resistance, which is both internal and external to the body. It cannot be classed as traditional fighting. This does not mean you avoid facing the attackers. Hell, the test for these skills is a group encounter. Using the story of the hungry cats chasing the speedy rat illustrates the divide between fight and flight. Without the rat accepting the proposition of being the victim, the cats are reduced to half-heartedly trying to jump at the uncooperative rat. It is this change in thoughts from having the rat in the bag to having nothing but a memory of the rat getting away. Plans of a meal have gone to waste, leaving the cats feeling somewhat dejected. Flight is the culprit that fully activated the rat by the life threat, while the cats were reduced to hesitation. It is accepted that the rat should loose and be annihilated by the superior force. So I wonder if the rat would want to fight any of the cats just to prove a point. The question to be asked is, why are the cats not performing as expected, knowing the cats are blessed with incredibly fast reactions and weapons? Somehow the advantages were lost. The point of the story is to focus the reader to the rat's ability to maintain consistency of motion and speed throughout the encounter. Somehow the rat found the path of least resistance and never found time to hesitate to face the cats. Even more remarkable to know that one clawing from a cat would be lights out for the rat. It must be nuts to consider the rat's advantage from a fighting point of view. Reduction works on the attackers because there is no urge wasting any time fighting off resistance at any point during the encounter. The only thing going for the rat is its determination to stay free from resistance and get to the exit first. The rat's draw card is the luck of staying fully activated from start to finish and not be distracted. The rat has somehow got into the groove and never split the one system to fend off resistance. The cats are driven by their hunting instincts to use their sharpened claws effectively, fully focused on having a great dinner. The cats wrongly expected the rat's solution would be to duck and weave to resist their advances by slowing. Cats are designed to chase down prey by slowing the target's progress. They do it so well they enjoy making a game of the chase before devouring the morsel. It is by nature's design that the rat triggered the flight response early to outrun the cat's intent. This makes the cats change their intended responses against this feisty rat as it bolted out of reach. At no time has the rat tried to control the cats and their superior firepower. It's obvious the attackers have simply lost their lead. Reduction is not a technique and therefore it cannot be isolated to a physical shape like a punch. It truly has no shape, nor does it display any aggressive gestures, thus confusing onlookers. People have tried to find a shape for reduction to make it technical and teachable. The catch is none of the technical adaptations were able to produce the desired outcomes under pressure. Anyone working in the energy world will know maintaining progression is about speed, not technical maintenance. Speed has no friends in the resistance world. This is why you will see no application of reduction to ring. Reduction occurs because you do not wish to play the game and is measured by your sense of freedom from social restriction and resistance. Techniques can work well in socially paired organized fights. They seldom work straight away out of the box, needing long hours of preparation and fighting exposure to function well. The problem with all techniques, they are built for the short game and should not be the go-to for multiple attacks. Those people with a sense of reality have indicated a group of attackers is something to avoid at all costs. Pre-planning techniques is somewhat futile as multiple attacker events are too unpredictable. In the energy world, the attacker is not the problem to solve, it is what you decide to do and when. Reduction is a product of responding extremely fast and ahead of the attackers. No time is spent hesitating and connecting with the fast-approaching wall of aggression. Effective use of time is your greatest asset, helping you decide to outrun the attacker's intent. Thus, reduction is an outcome, not a technique, therefore you measure success by your freedom from being grabbed and downed. Just like the cats, the rat has no intention to be entangled with a superior force. By rights, the cats should be the winners and get their prey. So why do social upstarts consider the self-destruction button by posturing too long before deciding to disengage? Martial artists are quick to point out there are opposing people out there capable of endangering your life. This verbal distraction opens the door to learning techniques to pacify the student's newly created fears. In the energy world, identifying the exits before danger arises is way more important than the secondary fight response. Flight always triggers a full activation and therefore gets the best out of people's defensive reactions. A real-life threat is a very specific trigger, leaving no confusion to what has to be your goal. The fight response is a collective of confused thoughts ranging from feeling like an imposter to wanting to win at any cost. So, the activation of the fight response is therefore slow, held to account by socially derived goals and conditioned techniques. This creates a mental mess, forcing victims to consider victory long before reacting to the true threat. To wait and see is madness when facing many attackers. It is your situational awareness that should have been setting off alarm bells long before the attack. Waiting with your gun may help you stand there with some confidence, but is the gun going to confirm your dominance? Why not shoot before you think? Could it be you are conditioned to fear the law when in control of a deadly weapon? In some countries, legal fears have been suppressed to save time, as any hesitation is more likely to be your death. Again, I will point out, it is your techniques that will stop you moving effectively and consistently. I cannot see it being rocket science that you need time to prepare yourself for each technical execution. I cannot see why the attackers will present the perfect situation to plug your strategies into, thus helping you to be successful. Technical execution is the time the attackers will down you. It is only natural that the attackers will feed off the time consumed developing technical choices. Knowing techniques are planned with a start and completion time in mind, giving the impression each combination is all what counts. Going berserk does not improve the transition from one combination to another. I wish these demonstrations stop masquerading as close to real experiences. I ask, where are those opportunists taking advantage of lost time, resulting in a not-so-pleasant feeding frenzy on an unprepared victim? This is seldom implemented, as it would demoralize many ill-informed students, unaware it is their beloved techniques causing them to be down so fast. When entering the madness of a group attack, conditioned people tend to stand in shock for too long as the attackers roll in. The energy world by its very nature avoids hesitation derived from technical remorse and imposter syndrome. Reduction does not misread the attacker's weaknesses, knowing they are always in a better position than you are in. The worst type of hesitation is waiting for attackers to confirm you are the one. You have no intention to absorb the attacker's resistance to satisfy their urges. You are not invisible when you stand still, preparing the courage to fight. Any hesitation will make you an even bigger target. At no time do you stop to smell the roses or bathe in expected successes. In the energy world, there is no intention to stop the attackers, they are free to do their worst. What the attackers cannot predict is that you are going to misbehave without hesitation. They will not expect you to thrive in the danger zone, like the rat running as if there are no tomorrows. Everything you are doing is opposite to what is expected. You are not seeing the attackers as the main problem. All you want is to be the invisible non-cooperative victim only interested in the exit. Speed is your friend, and you are playing your own game, not the attackers. Snapshots. Snapshots are memories seamlessly stitched together to make sense of reality. The camera analogy has been used to help lay people to imagine how we visualize the world. We remember events as a series of picturesque images that usually are less than clear, but salient enough to be a real mental representation. As an example, you see a punch coming in and then you reciprocate by stopping or avoiding the offense. We use snapshots to capture actual experiences and then develop a counter move like a duck and weave. The counter is always just less than immediate. This makes sense when snapshots are used in training, only to dance with the devil, meaning to shadow box. We take these picturesque images as being honest representations of what could be and then at some later stage devise specific strategies for the next time. Snapshots are not just images in the head, they are the specific moments that triggers our reactions to automatically defend ourselves. This indicates we choose to react in defense. These visual images exist with all our senses, making the moment more realistic. But do not be fooled, the mind's eye is not reality, it is able to fabricate an unlimited number of what-if scenarios for you to resolve. On reflection, the snapshot is the martial artist's best tool to procrastinate and dwell on what could be real. Each idea is just a confabulation solely designed to uncover one's ego. Just consider the number of techniques developed each day around the world, it is mind-boggling. Ask yourself, can they all be that useful? Yet, the spruikers will continue to stand on the floor eager to present another ingenious method enabling them to dismantle the unaware. Reality seems to exist more when the artist experiences another vivid defensive delusion founded on a momentary image. You would have thought pressure testing could have forced people to face some of the facts. Beliefs and ego are strong defenses in the arts and continues to this day. To make martial arts realistic defies the true attraction to snapshots. Life's recordings are but memories built on collecting distortions to reconstruct another internal snapshot. This is no different to seeing the continued value built into our beloved techniques, all controlled internally as cues for future successes. This ignores our limitations when it comes to real violence, where our internal visualizations become the first thoughts filtered out for survival efficiency. During an urgent life threat, urgency limits conscious thoughts because they interfere with the attention to unexpected unfoldings. In the arts, the aim is to condition our responses to be reactive under time pressures. The solution appears to be well practiced and automatic. The issue is they are still based on internal roleplays done in slow motion, far from actual speeds without the many additional complexities. It is human to build safer and more controllable environments to keep people as safe as possible. In relation to our learning, we all want to feel mentally fortified, avoiding any sense of vulnerability if possible. So, we spend a lot of time thinking of the types of preparations to avoid the pain of an expected attack. For every imagined situation, the mind constructs complex and secure mental moments, hoping to relinquish the imagined attack. Exposure and experience in training halls will give us the ground to justify one's defensive planning. The big weakness relating to conditioned responses is they become self-fulfilling. The expected attack becomes the actual assault, all because the delusory mental impressions see you successfully fighting back. It is our memories that will hold us accountable to having spent so much time learning self-defense. These inner confirmations create a slideshow of our inner snapshots, continually reminding the self of this courageous person who can fight and win on the day. To mentally control an imagined situation is only natural. But are all possible holes in defense covered by our memories? No, especially when the attack is unannounced and violent, all imagined preparations become inaccessible. Just a reminder, true violence occurs without warning, it is unexpected. An important point of clarity is that martial artists are well prepared for fighting, not for the unexpected. In preparation, a kick is great if the target is in clear sight. The assumption made by martial artists is trusting their inner images, recognizing the moment the kick was launched. For the one-on-one controlled situation, the recognition trigger will be great, but when facing a group attack, the expectations are lost. It is best to visualize a group attack as a series of unplanned attacks, occurring at no time or place. It is easy to teach people to visualize the use of techniques given their limited exposure to how fast everything changes when facing a well-motivated group attack. This means safety impressions are based on slow internal fabrications with limits on exposure and experiences. So, how does the energy world gain insights to actual speeds during a multiple attack compared to those imagined representations seen on most on-the-floor demonstrations? Training impressions are important to help martial artists to think of important self-defense moments. But it is not so important as you think. As mentioned, snapshots can be biased and distorted, interfering with our best preparations for future successes. The real issue is time. Anything created in your head takes time to construct and time to access and time to execute into what appears to be that definitive solution. We mistakenly condition the newly found beliefs is based on good planning, but from faulty memories. All appears well constructed and fortifies our sense of safety, like the security we put around our houses. You turn on the news and again another house invasion has occurred, even with extra security in place. The impression of defenses appears great at first glance, but we do not see the big picture well, leaving out senses vulnerable to the unexpected. A violent attack involving many attackers is just too much to prepare for, especially if you realize it's going to be chaos. Like all prepared defense strategies, it is the internal representations, not reality, that makes the situation less threatening. To keep our mind calm is a little daunting when there are an infinite number of possibilities to cater for. Yes, snapshots are the martial artist's go-to evidence that the salient moment has been resolved by the on-the-floor demonstrations. In the energy world, training against a group attack is not asking participants to recall salient moments, as they are distortions of the actual event. As a reminder, real-time occurs in mental darkness and therefore has no cognitive recall. This is not pleasing to know for martial artists, as they love to spend untold hours developing precious technical defenses from a snapshot. Unfortunately, outside of the social fight, the benefits are limited. In the energy world, we like everything to be novel and new, basing all our reactions as close to real-time as possible. Previous memories interfere, because they become that mental grab that forces us to visualize parts of the situation before it unfolds. Any prior vision affects speed, slowing the progress to find safe exits. It is like when you talk, you see the idea and then say it. Walking is different, there are no plans to take your next step when the path is clear. To focus on each step would be very inefficient. Interestingly, snapshots could also be conceived as the internal visions we have before speaking. The use of snapshots is great at helping us visualize our head moving by slipping to the side for safety before the opponent can react. As with all techniques, there is a beginning and end. Techniques lack continuity and therefore you cannot get into flow. This is when you are in the groove, moving efficiently at speed with no hesitation. I would like to consider this to be the cornerstone of the energy world, tending to drive you faster forwards than the attacker's intent. During flow, snapshots do not exist, so there is no attack and defensive moves. Techniques by their conception are self-fulfilling that lets both sides of the encounter predict the next action. What appears to be unreachable in a fight are our inner habits relating to social rules long before the techniques are executed. Flow disrobes the attacker's mental grabs long before attacker's defensive activations, leaving a mental gap in the immediate offense. Therefore, attackers are left at a disadvantage by not being able to grab you mentally and physically when you are moving at speed with a disconnected mindset. This internal and external understanding of safety can only be achieved at speed. It is another world where you can step up your pace to be ahead of the impending catastrophe of a group attack. Snapshots exist because we grab onto the first distortion that makes sense. It takes time to analyze and decipher those incoming less than clear images by replaying them as mental trials until the story fits. The truth be told, it is far from happenings in the actual event. Ask yourself which part of the elephant you are touching when blindfolded. Real-time and real-life recordings are but figments of people's imaginations. Yes, a momentary snapshot can be the basis for developing techniques in future defense, but this cannot work for people when moving at speed, as there is no reason to rehearse details when you are not intending to connect with the attackers, mentally or physically. The trouble is taking snapshots is a distraction, which suppresses what is about to happen in the event. In truth, you have no idea of what is about to unfold, but you are willing to connect with the attackers and even submit to the impending doom. It is only human to take stock of a momentary focus instead of maintaining real-time safety. This is like a driver needing to keep their eyes on the road as an effective safety strategy and not focus on anything specific. A snapshot makes you connect with your opponent. It is a social rule. It is like aiming an arrow at a target, only focused on hitting the bullseye. The intensity of the focus helps drive the arrow forward into the target, captivated by the red dot. There is no intention to consider alternatives or changes to the focus task. It is your need for control which suppresses the world view. There is no time to observe both internal and external worlds at the same time. The kick is coming, and you must deal with it or get hit. The urge to connect with the kick trajectory is the basis of your counter. It is only normal to want to be first and win the day. It would mean you have taken control of that moment before moving on. Taking a snapshot is far from experiencing the moving world. Imagine running down a very steep wooded hill as fast as you can, allowing every step to become novel as the challenging terrain unfolds. So, when moving at speed, the attackers are not seen as walls of resistance, but as the unexpected obstacles course. The aim is to make the most of the uncharted terrain and undergrowth, while still maintaining speed and safety. What is just in front of you blocking the way is not the problem to solve, which would mean connection and the slowing of progress. Your forward drive must have no hesitations, as you would find with a duck and weave strategy. To slow would mean you lose sight of the moving world all around you, and the path of least resistance would be lost. It is only when the inner and outer views come together in real time do safe spaces come alive and you have outrun the attacker's intent to do harm. Speed allows the world to move in front of your senses in a continuous way, opening avenues to avoid resistance. You are not stopping progress for anything, giving the impression you are free from resistance. Therefore, safety is assured because you have no connection with the attackers. Decisions are not considered upfront, as there are no anticipations and expectations prior to the event. To stand there hesitating is not a thing anymore. You now know the battlefield is made up of many unconnected futures that create the important line of progression to the exit. Unhindered in thought, you are drawn forward even faster than you expected. It's almost like a chess grandmaster that can look at the board and instantly know the best of the next 5 moves. Again, snapshots are probably the sole cause why many people hesitate, hindered by anticipation and expectation before any event has taken place. The snapshot is specifically chosen as a social response, needing other people's approval to make them real. This is why we are so attracted to people's propositions relating to technical descriptions. We need others to be able to fulfill our desires and expectations to win the day. It seems to be easier to focus our attentions on the attacker's traps that need solving rather than your own self-fulfilling habits. This allows us to dream about becoming the best martial artist out there solving all the problems for others. Hence the victim of your own making and the biggest problem to solve. The attackers are better likened to the forest we navigate when running through its undergrowth, avoiding connection with objects if possible. Somehow, we were told to clear all the trees to make life safer. The problem is in our mind long before facing the forest. We are told the trees must go and things will be right. Our social needs drive us to be inflexible, resulting in strong beliefs, making opponents obstacles to be cleared and destroyed. When it comes to a group attack, we are trying to do the impossible, aiming to become superhuman and walk through and knock down brick walls. I suspect it will hurt a lot. You are committed to solving the chosen problem long before you even commit to the uncharted waters of a battle. So you are stuck in the mud, sifting through a series of past snapshots just to imagine a totally fabricated event. We have all been exposed to these concocted statements of defensive excellence before any real experience. You have spent countless hours learning to duck and weave between the imaginary assaults. Still, you stand there waiting, anticipating, expecting and hesitating in front of the attackers. By this time snapshots have been rehearsed many times looking for that perfect fit to make the situation real. No wonder it is hard to transition training to controlling an actual group attack, because nothing has been considered beyond the one-on-one on-the-floor defensive exercises. These thoughts become even more wanting when considering the unseen flankers being so effective at doing you harm while trying your best. The battlefield seldom is envisaged for the types of attackers coming in from all directions. Your viewpoint only caters for what's in front of you, not the broader landscape. By the time you have looked around, you could say the hungry cats would have taken you down as their prey. The issue being we are unaware that we have signed a mental contract that is bound by learnt rules. In the energy world, exponents like to avoid social rules and remain busy playing their own games, not the attackers. This assists you to become socially invisible, disconnected from the rules, seemingly more involved in speed of progression to an exit to achieve full disengagement. The drive for social independence is like running through a forest, not wanting to connect with any objects on the path. At no time do you stop and acknowledge your presence. There have been no attempts to shield yourself from the attacks, meaning you have no intent to engage to win some ground. Traditional approaches only exist because of the social gain that places you in the fight arena for that win. I know it is your right to stand where you like, but there are alternatives to free yourself from being the victim when facing a group attack. Thanks for listening. Yes, there is a part 3B in the pipeline,